we go. Thank you for being here this morning. Here is the series Coming Home to You. And let me mute myself on the live. There we go. Hi, I am Margarita Rose. Thank you for coming. Here on the phone with me today, I have Catherine Ann. Did I say phone or call? Here on the live on the topic today on intimacy, I am so grateful and honored to welcome Catherine Ann, Ellen, and Cindy on today's topic of intimacy. And Coming Home to You is a series that I had it in my heart to be giving in the holidays and helping people, or not helping people, but supporting people through the holidays when they feel stress, anxiety. And this is what sparked the series. And I figured, like in the beginning of the year, it's a great way to continue the support and shifting a mindset and getting underneath what is possibly a pattern or a story we keep playing out that we want to uncover. And so we've talked about authenticity, vulnerability, boundaries, and now we're talking about intimacy. And I feel as I've gone along, I've noticed that they all kind of work together, and they're all based off of just your true authentic self and speaking from a place of neutrality and responsibility. And so I'm very curious to see and excited where this conversation is going to lead us today. And so first I want to go around and just quickly introduce yourself, like a 1-minute intro, what you do, and then what is intimacy to you? Like, how do you define intimacy? Is it something that you had a breakthrough through? Actually, just answer what is intimacy to you? Let's start there. Anybody want to popcorn first?
Yeah, my name is Catherine Ann Clayton, and I am a crypto enthusiast, and I help people to gain knowledge in the crypto space to create passive income. I am a wife first, mom second, and I just really believe that intimacy is about being connected from a soul level with everybody, and even if it's not a person, but it's like being intimate with your calendar. Knowing exactly what's going on in your calendar means that you're intimate with your calendar or your schedule or whatever it is. So, intimacy can also be, if you will, out of the bedroom. It's not only that, it's being, I can be intimate with all three of you, and allowing you to see who the person I really am is.
Yes, I love that you presence that intimacy is not just between a romantic, connection in the bedroom. So yes, intimacy is all things in the calendar. I love that you brought that. It's great to talk. Intimacy can be tangible when we understand how different ways we can be intimate in our life. And so I'm excited. Yes, so far so good. Cindy?
Hi, I am Cindy Meldon. I am a leadership development coach and engagement specialist coach. And intimacy for me, I work with a lot of hybrid and remote. So it's learning how to build those intimate relationships when you're not physically with somebody. So intimacy for me, is leading with love, both in your personal and professional life. It's making those connections through transparency, communication, vulnerability, and really building those strings and bonds that bring people together, whether they're in the room together or whether they're remote.
Yeah, vulnerability to be intimate, definitely. Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, so I'm Ellen, and I am a registered nurse and a wellness advocate. So I also have a wellness company where I do IV therapies and have some products that help the body to heal itself. Intimacy. I was challenged this week that that's the next cut for me, is to learn to be intimate. And, I'm hearing, I love what Catherine Ann said too, about intimate with the calendar And the reminder that it's more than just, there's some, it's more than just what we think of in relationships. And I'm here to learn about intimacy. I've heard it said, into me, we see. So I was thinking about that. And I guess there needs to be a certain amount of worthiness and self-love in order to truly be intimate and allow people to see you. And so I'm here to learn, because that gets to be where I get to grow into.
Yes, we're all here to grow and expand our awareness. And sometimes something that I just recently said, even to a mentor of mine, was it does, and I heard it said in the room recently too, where somebody else said the same thing I said. Sometimes you hear it 4, 5, 6 times until it really lands, right? Or it's the way that somebody said it in that moment, or maybe you were open because you were having experiences or whatever it is, right? So that's why it's important for us to speak up in our voice and be heard. Because even though you hear something so many times and you're like, well, I'm not going to say it because that person said what I was going to say. No, say it anyway. Because you saying it in your words, in your unique way, with your energy behind it, your little twist, it's going to land with someone that didn't land when the first person said. So it's important. And that's also being intimate with your intuition. Like, if it's in your heart, speak it. It's there for a reason. Right. And that's the first, I think, path to intimacy, is just being authentic of understanding what it is you want. Right. And there are pillars that support us when we think of intimacy. For me, I feel vulnerability, trust, and empathy with connection. And that is intimate with yourself first. Right. When I kept thinking about being intimate with others, create connection with others, there was a block, there was resistance. And as I started doing personal development and really getting intimate with me, who really I am, and not the person I thought I was supposed to be, or the person I was told I should be, or the person I felt safe to be. What happened was I started getting uncomfortable, but what happened was that I started understanding that I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't loving myself. I wasn't feeling worthy and doing all the things that I was trying to give out. So what I was giving out was from an empty cup. And so it came off that way, empty. And I'm understanding now how much I've destroyed trust with the people that I love, because I wasn't willing to get intimate with myself. Because, like you said, Ellen, about the worthiness and the self-love. And it wasn't until I got intimate with myself and poured into myself that I started to understand just how much pain and disconnect I created within myself and in my life. And it became where it was like, am I going to choose that, or am I going to shift? And in understanding how to shift, it's going to take a couple steps that you take forward and a couple steps back, but you're still moving forward. And when you have the intention to really go deep and get vulnerable with yourself, because it's hard to look inside, because we want to self-beat up. We want to be criticizing ourselves and self-judgment. So when you just go in there with curiosity and neutrality, like being neutral about how you feel about it, and just seeing as like, okay, what was really underneath that? What's the story I was playing out? Is it my story? Is it my truth? Is it a limiting belief that I got from somebody or somewhere in my life to protect myself? Is it the armor? Is it the wall? Last week we talked about boundaries not being walls or a moat that you put around your heart, and that's what we do with ourselves. And then we wonder why we're not understood. We wonder why we create friction, because we don't understand ourselves and what we want. So I hope that this conversation really leads us, and we can really go deep and get vulnerable and trust that what is in our heart is really going to help expand us. And when we can have empathy and compassion and connect with ourselves, and treat ourselves with the same self-respect that we treat others, that we want others to treat us with, healing really begins, and intimacy gets created on a deep level where possibilities and opportunities lie, in my opinion. Like, because then we can get intimate. We really have intention behind it because we are really intimate with our commitments, our connections, our calendars, right? Our word. And a lot of the times when we aren't our word, it breaks our confidence. And we go back into self-beat up. So just get going in and really understanding why you're breaking your word. What's underneath that? What's the story you're playing out? And so that's also getting intimate. So I want to ask you ladies, like, how do you get intimate with yourself? What ways are you vulnerable, or where you find empathy and connection important, or trusting in your life that builds intimacy for you?
I think for me, it's really getting to how are you feeling? We can address a lot, but we may not always be honest with ourselves of how we're truly feeling, or even taking the time to maybe journal or meditate on what is it that I'm feeling? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I disappointed? And we may bypass all those feelings. I don't think you can be intimate with yourself if you don't understand, for one, where is it coming from? And what is it that it's engaging and triggering within you? And how are you going to feel and address it?
But something that I've been working on lately about intimacy is when you're thinking of a certain subject, I have to sit down and I go, how does my body feel about this? Where in my body am I uncomfortable? Or, for this decision, I had a huge person that called me, a huge marketer, makes lots of money, and called me and wants to be on his team. And I had, the initial wanting to do it and being intimate with him and working with him was exciting. And then I had to sit down and really kind of meditate about, is this something that I really want? And how does it feel in my body? And where does it feel weird, or where does it feel good or bad? And I actually am kind of shocked. I decided last night, and I was sitting on the floor again in my bathroom, just kind of going, okay, where am I feeling a yes or am I feeling a no? And I actually am saying no to him. And it's because it doesn't align with what I am creating in my life and in my space and with the people that I'm working with. And, I wanted to really create to be a present wife and mom, and it'll take me away from that. And, passive income is my thing, and it will take me away from that because I'll be back in the grind again. So saying to yourself, just sitting back and just kind of closing your eyes and going, how does my body feel about this? Is it in my stomach? And we use this with my daughter, and she was talking about, well, it hurts in my stomach when I think about this. And so figuring out where in your body and what your body is saying to yourself really is getting intimate with yourself, because you're using the physical reaction to figure out what you really want. Because we tend as humans just to jump. I mean, you like somebody or you look up to somebody, or you want them on your team, or whatever it is that you're building, or you want to coach them. And really, it's not a good connection, or really it is a great connection and it feels good all of your body.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say, Catherine Ann, is the power of the pause, like pausing and checking in, like instead of reacting, right? Respond after checking in with yourself. And I love what you presencing where does it hurt? Where does it feel in your body? Because that's where I went myself when I had chronic hip pain on my right hip. And it started off years ago as what I thought was sciatic issues. And then when I would work out really badly, I would have it all the way down my leg where I couldn't walk, but that was like random and sporadic. And I had kids, 2 of them back to back. And all of a sudden it was all the way down the top of my foot and I couldn't walk. And to this day, like my foot is different. It's like my bones hit. But I was having hip pain. I was getting so debilitating where even my husband, like every day is like, you're back again? Like, how can I help you? And he was so awesome, always massaging me and offering to help. But it was like nothing could help. And all I could do was stretch my legs, stretch my legs, stretch my legs. And doctors, MRIs, nothing. And so one time I was going through learning all about energy work and medicine and all that stuff. And so I went in and I asked, like, what is this pain? Where is it coming from? What am I holding on to? And what came to me was shame and guilt. And I asked more questions. And so I was really curious that by getting curious, right, and getting intimate with myself and finally asking the questions, that it revealed to me. And so I was able to release it. I cried it out and I forgave myself. And I kind of went into how old I was in those times that I felt shame and guilt. And I healed that version of me. And I brought her with me. And I held her and I hugged her and I forgave her and I released her and I said, thank you. And I asked her to forgive me for still, holding her small and keeping her away and whatever. And I felt a wave of energy from my hip down to my foot, and the pain has been gone since then. And I was in 2020. And it was amazing to experience that when I finally got intimate with myself. So when I finally got intimate with myself, that pain went away. And I was like, wow, there's power with intention and getting intimate. Healing happens. Everybody needs to know. I was like, I want to tell everybody, right? And that's what brought me to personal development, because there was still something that was getting in my way of showing up. And there's value in going in and checking what's underneath what you feel resistance towards, right? So, hi, Jen. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah,
Good
we went around and we talked about intimacy and what it means to us. And right now we were just continuing the conversation about vulnerability, trust, and empathy with connection, are kind of pillars to get intimate. So we were just wanted to ask you to give me a 1-minute intro of who you are and also what is intimacy to you. And then we can just continue the conversation from there.
Yeah. So my name is Jen. I am a bold, confident, loving woman. And in my career, in my occupation, I'm a transformational coach and breathwork facilitator, really supporting people with anxiety and getting underneath what that is, the anxiety is a symptom, what's underneath it, and helping people break through that through the power of our breath. And intimacy to me, like I've heard you say before, Margarita, is into me you see. And it's vulnerability, it's connection, it's trust, it's authenticity. And so, yeah, something I am practicing as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And so I shared a story how when I got intimate with myself, I was able to heal chronic pain in my hip. Was there a story of intimacy for you that is in your heart that when you think of intimacy, you're like, how have you applied it? Or are you something that you're working on? Where are you on your intimate level?
Something I'm definitely working on. I can say I've become more and more intimate over these past couple years. For me, a lot of what it's been for me lately is becoming intimate with myself, like in the practice of self-love and just being really honest, radically honest with myself, not trying to look outside of myself or do what I think other people are expecting me to do or be, but really just tuning into who am I? What do I want? And being intimate with that and honoring and acknowledging that unapologetically. And yeah, it's led to some pretty big transitions, life changes, uprooting a lot of areas of my life, which has been very uncomfortable. And I do feel it's moving me closer to my vision and who I get to be.
You really are my twin soul sister. Because just like me, I feel like you said what I said earlier. And I love that when we start to really share and we're vulnerable with one another and we come together like this, we realize how much alike we are in the world. And it just gives people permission to be like, oh, this all I have to be is authentically me and go inward and figure out what I want. It seems like awesome fun and a cool, right? But then I want to also presence that for people who are not feeling worthy, who don't have the self-love. It's hard because I was there. Why would I even take care of myself? I wasn't going to the doctor's office when something would happen because I wasn't feeling worthy of that. And so it was a choice I made one day, realizing that I matter. And what gave me the strength was that I had a purpose. I remembered when I was 8 years old that I had a higher purpose to bring healing to the world. And I connected myself to that again, the true self, who I am. And everything I've done since then has been leading to my vision of that. And it's been a blessing and an honor to connect with other thought leaders out there in the world. I didn't expect this, sorry. And yes, just like you, Jen, and just like everyone here, yeah, sometimes shedding what doesn't serve anymore is a hard thing, but it's the best thing. And we get to just trust the process and surrender to it. Anybody else had a moment of trust and surrender that it felt hard or scared and you pushed through? And if so, like, what was on the other side for you?
And I just want to honor you, Margarita, for displaying intimacy right here, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and emotional on camera is very intimate and very relatable and brave. So thank you.
Thank you.
So my journey with intimacy has been interesting. I didn't realize, because I'm loving, because I connect, I'm pretty easy to share vulnerably. Intimacy is so different than all of that. I'm learning, like, intimacy with myself. And only recently, I guess it was about a year ago, I really started to recognize how much, like, repressed emotions and things I would have down. And I was like, oh, I'm making that up. I'm not going there. This is not, like, I'm just at an even keel. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm not going there. And last summer, and a bunch of things came up that I got to release. And I realized how much that I still, up until now, even just the last couple of days, really breaking through, like, doing the next thing, not stop taking care of myself, feeling the feels, like, at all. And I've come to realize, like, that idea of breaking, my word to myself and not trusting is like learning that there's this part of me that doesn't trust me, that just says, yeah, that's promoter bullshit. You're not gonna, whatever. And not really even believe that I am going to keep my word to myself. And so that has really become, a breakthrough to me, to look at those parts of me that are broken and say, okay, we got to work on this. We got to trust that, instead of, like, pushing it away and charging through. So I had an experience in the last couple of days in our leadership class where I was captaining, and I went into the captain's corner for a meeting. They said, what's going on? You don't look. I'm like, well, my father-in-law is transitioning. The kids were needing support around some things. And they're like, well, what do you do with that? I'm like, put it away, because I'm captaining. I don't have time for that. Like and they like led me to stop and to take them. And like, that is really a journey, to be intimate, to allow myself to feel, because I just was in a relationship for so many years that it was like, well, I can't fix this for you. What are you gonna? So I didn't express anything. It was like, put it away and go on, put it away and go on. And I'm just on the journey to be kind to myself in those areas, and to realize how harsh I have been and not allowing myself, and the beauty of the pause. And I'm just in the beginning of that journey, though.
Yes, there was something in there that I heard you say was the broken parts of you, right? And so I'm curious to get like, what feels broken about you?
Yeah. I guess what I mean when I say that is like the parts of me that aren't working, like the little girl that's not trusting me because I haven't kept my word to myself. The scared kinds of parts, the parts that aren't working, and it's like that resist, persist. Like all this is really coming to me in a big way, because I'll just push those things away. The limiting beliefs, the whatever, just put them over there and charge through, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, great. And I love that I asked the question, right? Because that is more powerful a statement than saying you're broken.
Right.
And words are really important, right?
Yes,
words have a vibration, words have a frequency, and they have a meaning behind them. So it's really important what we're saying to ourselves.
Yes.
Right? Getting intimate with our words, with our thoughts. Another way to get intimate. Getting intimate with our thoughts. When I realized that I was the worst, and then I'm sitting there saying, well, he made me feel this way. He made me do that.
Right.
I was like, nobody made me do anything. Nobody made me think anything. That was all me. Right? Any other experiences of intimacy, Jen, that you want to share?
So much about.
You came off mute. Sorry.
I did.
Okay.
Ellen, I love your share so much, because as you were talking, I was like, yeah. Like I could just relate to so much of what you shared. And the part about not trusting yourself is absolutely something I have been healing recently. I think that's where the intimacy has come in a lot, is just reflecting and realizing over the years how many times I didn't honor my word to myself. Like I was great at honoring my word to others, and a lot of times that would conflict with honoring my word to myself, or get in the way of honoring my word to myself and not having those healthy boundaries. And so it slowly eroded my self-trust, because every time I make a commitment to myself and I don't follow through, that's eroding my self-trust, right? And so it was this big revelation, and I haven't figured it out perfectly yet, and it's a work in progress. But just even those silent commitments we make to ourselves, like there was a commitment I had, a while back, of like, I'm going to go work out 3 times a week. And every time that didn't happen, and I let another meeting or something get in the place of that, then it's like, okay, how can I said I was going to do something, I didn't do it. And so now I don't trust myself. And so, so building up that trust in myself has been a real big part of my journey over this past year, of like, I made this decision, and then I find myself in doubt about the decision I make. And was that the best decision? Was that the right decision? Did I mess up? Did I make a mistake? And then like, okay, like let's exercise that self-trust. And in terms of words, Margarita, yes. words are so, so powerful. And I even find that, like, you know, some of the ways we change our words in our leadership training too is like uh, just the small change of like have to or need to, switching that to I get to or I choose to. Just that little switch is like it's empowering. It's not like I have to do this because someone's forcing me or making me do it. It's I get to or I choose to do it because I hold the power, and I'm making that conscious choice to do this. And so just those little shifts can make a really big difference.
Wow. And so was there something that you said in there about eating at your not going to work out, right? Something as simple as that. And so yeah, it does cut at your confidence, right? And I have been working on my integrity, my word to myself mostly, right? The things that I say in my head that I promise myself, and it's been a battle. And I'm noticing I haven't been intimate with what is underneath that. What is the payoff really for me that I am having by not being my word to myself? And like the only thing that could come up is that I'm right. I'm not trustworthy. I am right. I'm not good enough. I'm right. Not worthy of love and connection. If I want trust, how do I get trust? Trust that I'm going to be my word. Trust that I'm going to do what I say. And if I don't, trust that I'm going to get intimate with myself with that. Really get underneath it. If I want it to shift, the only way to do it. And if you don't know what it looks like reach out to any one of us. We'll be happy to take you down the process to get underneath it with you. What's working, what's not working. Because there are times we have blind spots that we are not capable of seeing without a coach or a mentor there that is going to give us loving, neutral feedback as a gift. If we all could just be honest and authentic with one another in a loving, compassionate way, we all would be rising one another up, and we wouldn't be in the state we are in the world right now. So we got so sensitive. You're hurting my feelings. It's bringing up something in my past. And instead of looking and getting intimate with it, we push it away. And we wonder why we don't have intimate relationships in our lives. And we feel alone, not good enough, and we don't belong, which is all the things we want to do. We're social beings. All we want to do is connect and belong, and not fit in, but belong. I'm not some square trying to get in a round hole. I'm not trying to fit in this hole. I'm hoping that I am so we are, when we show up in our authentic selves, we cause and create every experience that we want. We're so powerful that when you have an intention, it will happen. So is your intention to cause intimacy in your life, or is it to create disconnect? Because you get to give yourself first what it is that you want. And then you give it away when you're full. How do you give away intimacy in your life?
Mm-hmm.
How do you give it to yourself and then give it away? What's the value in that for you? What do you think can shift in someone? Being in empathy, creating connection, allowing us, being that safe space for them, building trust. How do you build trust with people that they can be intimate and vulnerable with you? How does it look like for you for people to build trust with you? Does it mean having boundaries? Does it mean being vulnerable? Is he coming up for anyone? We're a funky bunch. Let's dance. Let's take it off. Let's do the energy.
Right. Yes. Oh my gosh. Like
Let's get intimate. Let's
yeah.
get intimate.
Okay, that's what I love.
I wanna
That's what I love about
intimate.
you. You can create a song out of anything. It's so good.
I can't. That's a superpower. And I'm finally letting people see that in the world.
I love it. I'm like, keep that going. It's so fun.
And I just want to point out that Jen and I both, we were choosing songs about like our intention for the year, and we both chose This Is Me and Brave as a song that we wanted to mash up, but we both decided to sing the opposite one instead. So I sang This Is Me and she sang Brave. So together we're twinning.
We are. We need to just like mash up our videos.
We should mash up our videos. That would be fun.
Awesome.
All right. So let's see. There are a few things that I do when intimacy is something that I'm striving for, right? Is that I check in with myself. I take a deep breath, pausing, as Catherine Ann has discussed, and just going in and calming myself, just listening to my breath, paying attention to the breath, because that's the only way to calm the monkey mind. And I just say, what do I want today? Just today. Who am I? And I usually start the day before I even get out of bed, before I even open my eyes. And I just say to myself, I am a loving, brave, committed leader. I am love. I love myself. I am powerful. Whatever comes to my mind that morning, I'll say to myself. Then I put my hands to my heart and I just find one or two things that I'm grateful for. And with that energy of gratitude, I say, just for today, I will be loving. Just for today, I will be peace. Just for today, I will be whole. And then I ask myself, what do I want to create today? And I think I want to create connection with my family. I want to create self-love by meditating. What else? I declare I will create connection by calling a friend that I haven't talked to in a while. These are things, it's going in deep. And then when you connect with your heart and what it is you want for the day, just for the day, not for tomorrow, not for yesterday, but for today. The only moment we have is now. And then you take another deep breath in and a long breath out. And then make sure you smile. That activates your radiant circuit. Give yourself 2 thumbs up. That's also activating your radiant circuit. And it brings, and ignites your joy. Yeah. And then, how do you guys feel with that? Like, what came to you? What is it that you wanted for today?
I feel grounded now. I came off a couple calls right before this and was in like this doing mode, and now I just feel like reconnected and grounded. It feels good. So being able to go about my day from a place of centeredness, like being in my heart, not in my head. Like,
Love that. Me too. If I'm being honest, yes, I was definitely in my head as well with life things, right? Like life happens. And I made a commitment to be here. And there are times that every week comes by and this 9 o'clock call comes up And part of me just wants to say, no, I don't want to do it. It's not, like, oh, it's every week I have to do it. It's a commitment. Oh, but I push through it because I go in and I go, no, my vision is to show up. And when I focus out and being giving and being able to collaborate with ladies and beautiful, powerful women like you is what gives me the courage and grounds me in my commitment to step forward. Right. And the only way to create that is consistency. And that's how I build trust. People are willing to get intimate with me because now they trust me because I keep showing up. That I'm starting to show up for myself. That's the only way that I've been able to show up here, because I started showing up for myself. When you showed up for yourself, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as we talk about being in our heads, I'm sitting here and I feel like I'm a little ADHD because I'm like, I have like 100 thoughts. I'm like, oh, I should say this or talk about this, or I should say this and talk about this. I'm trying to pull all those cohesive pieces together and sound like a halfway smart person. It's like trying to pull it together. But when I think about, intimacy for myself and coming out of, a divorce and a separation and things like that, and figuring out that I had lost myself, and we had talked about this before, kind of losing yourself and refinding yourself, and how do you maintain that? I think when you maintain that, you have found yourself, and what is it? Who are you? What is meaningful to you, and what's impactful to you, and are you living your life that way? I think is important. When I think of my day-to-day and being intimate with myself, there's a lot of things. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and the world that we're in and the things that are happening around us, I fight constantly of, I will challenge the norms, but the norms for her to challenge today are not as safe as they were or are for me. And how do I stay intimate, create trust, create a world where she's not going to be fearful or, not enjoying her childhood, and still be a leader, a voice of leadership? Those are struggles that I do. And you really have to dig deep of what is it and what are you willing to risk in order to maintain and create, because this is the next generation. And if we stifle them, if we don't allow them to be intimate with themselves and others around them, what does that leave the world? So those are things that I go through on a day-to-day basis and process in the beginning of my day. And we have to get real with my daughter. So I still may have been ADHD in my thoughts, but I'm trying to pull them all together.
Yeah, and thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing that with us, right? Because sometimes we don't want to, because they're like, oh, right, that there's something you said there that I was like, come together with something like a half smart person would say, right? And there we go again, kind of using words that are putting us in a place that is holding us small. And it is definitely something that I'm constantly always doing as well. And the great thing is that it's not about right, wrong, or self beat up. It's just like, oh, there I go, the shift. You're like, all right. And that's when you get to a place of being like that and you keep crossing the line, like stepping over that resistance, that pattern, that limiting belief. After a while, you start realizing, wow, I'm actually living on the other side now. But it's going to take a while, especially when intimacy is a new thing for us, especially when intimacy, and it's not like you're ever going to be like, oh, I'm fully intimate and I don't have to worry about working on it. It's always ongoing with anything. There's always, even when you start to have a 10-10 relationship with someone, don't stop there. How much further can you go? Make it another 10 and strive for that. Like, our journey is not to just learn everything and then, because you're not going to possibly ever always learn everything. There's always room for more. And that goes with learning about yourself. Because I'm not the same person I was even a year ago after this personal development. I feel like a woman. I used to always look at women that were powerful and just presented themselves, like you paid attention when they walked in the room when they had to say something. And I was always like, oh, and I never saw myself in that light. I always felt like the kid who didn't have a degree, didn't have all this stuff, that was not good enough.
Hmm.
You know, but the interesting thing is that when I started really going in who I am truly, I started shining in my power, and people's feedback of me is that I am that person, that woman that I used to look up to. And it's the interesting thing that I just realized and made the connection, thank you, mentors, was, you know, how when we're going through this process, if you spot it, you got it. Like if you spot something in someone that kind of triggers you, it's something inside you usually, if you really get intimate with it and go, you know, that person's doing and saying that is something that I might not agree with myself, that I'm battling with, right? And then it's the same with the opposite. When you see greatness and the beauty in someone, you have it too. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Because I was just having this conversation with a cohort of mine who was not in her power, who I saw in her power the first time I met her. And it was great. One of those, see, when you get intimate with who's in your heart and you call them, right? Like, and your intuition comes up, you have someone in your heart and you call them, there's usually something in the conversation that helps expand you in that moment. Or like, usually that person, even if they don't say it to you, they're like, oh my gosh, this was so great. Thank you so much for calling me. This call was perfect. I really needed this call today. And that builds connection and intimacy with your friends. Intimacy for me too is, in creating connection is also, if I see, you know, if I walk by and my husband's doing this because his shoulder hurts and I was about to come to the computer and get some work done, I was like, you know, I'm going to take 5 minutes and rub his shoulder. That creates intimacy and trust.
Mhm.
And so empathy and connection. Let me read here what Brene Brown says. Intimacy involves not only sharing one's own experiences, but also being able to empathize with and understand experiences of others. The mutual understanding and connection deepen the emotional bonds between individuals, fostering a sense of intimacy.
Hmm.
What comes up for you guys hearing that?
Will you read it one more time?
Yeah, so empathy, right, and connection. Intimacy involves not only sharing one's own experiences, but also being able to empathize, and understand the experience of others.
Hmm.
Just what empathy means, right? Just being to be empathetic with the listening, with compassion, and the understanding of this, the mutual understanding and connection deepens emotional bonds. And there was a moment when I was able to sit and listen with compassion and empathy to someone kind of yelling at me, right? Making me be what normally would make me feel like victim and defense, you know, and I would recoil and retreat. But in this moment, working at, you know, in this leadership program, I was sat in complete empathy and compassion and listening, in responsibility and in neutrality. And I reminded myself that this was not about me. This was about this person's pain, hurt, fear, bubbling up and being thrown at me. So when I was able to just really pause, right? There's that word again, pause, and remind myself, right? Going in and going, oh, this is not about me. I get to be sitting in empathy and compassion, because my goal here is to create connection and have them be heard and seen. So just like me, I want to be heard and seen in those moments. And so when I was able to stop, I even had to take a breath, right? Because it helped to release that that fight flight response that we all naturally get in, and it helps to calm it, right? And Jen, I want you to talk a little bit about breath work after this and how it really helps. And so then what that allowed me to do is to sit in full responsibility for the connection, that it allowed me to like just sit in neutral, being neutral and hearing them. And so I was able to respond, right? And I paused before I respond. And I was like, I hear you. I hear that you're upset. And I'm so sorry that that's how you feel, right? And then just repeating back to them what you heard. And then what that did is like soften the shoulders. They had a breath. And then the situation got neutralized, when it used to end up being like a 3, 4, 5 day avoidance of one another. And there's no connection there. There's no intimacy there. Right? And there's vulnerability in being responsible for someone else's outbursts when you want to just defend yourself and be right. Well, it's not fair. You shouldn't, right? Because there's no clear boundary set for me. I haven't set clear boundaries up until now about being spoken to a certain way. Right? And so what that happens is it's distrust, right? Because all of a sudden I'm going to have it in my mind that I set boundaries without clearly stating them. They're not going to understand that all of a sudden now I'm changing, raising my standards, or just operating in a level of excellence and responsibility, that I can't just all of a sudden come out of nowhere and say, you could talk to myself. These are my boundaries, and then throw the wall up. That's like throwing the wall up. That's why I think boundaries is the B word for a lot of people. There's some people that were actually going to be on my call last week who don't believe in boundaries. And so I really wanted to have her on the call, because I would be great juxtaposed to talk about why you feel that way and expand, right? And so with intimacy and that connection that was created there, it was hard at first, right? Because when you hear the word responsibility, you're like, well, how am I responsible? The first instinct is that I want to be like, well, how am I responsible for his outbursts or her outbursts, or that guy cutting me off? Well, a lot of times it's perspective. And we make it about us, and we create our own story around it. And so when I was working on a project with my colleagues, the topic was intimacy. And it was interesting. What happened was that when we got, things came up and it got triggered. Somebody had the story and they felt that it was me. I was the catalyst. And they felt that I had been judging or whatever. And in my aspect, I was like, my intentions were so different. And so when I expressed my intentions and she expressed the story that was playing out for her limiting beliefs and her fears, right? She was able to trust and get vulnerable. And I created connection by being empathetic and having empathy, right? To her story and like in her breakthrough, because I see her in her greatness, right? And it wasn't until we really went in and got deep and I was able to express my intention and she heard me and we understood each other, and that created connection and that created intimacy. And it was interesting that it was her own growth and it was my own growth. Like I got a different breakthrough than she did. My breakthrough was really pausing and seeing, is that to say that, is it necessary, or how can I word it where compassion and love shine first? And that was a beautiful moment. And that's something that I discovered about myself, and she was able to break through as well on her intimacy. And it was because we both showed up for one another the way that we did, without having judgment, and we were willing to lean in the resistance. when it gets hard. And leading in is where the power lies, where the breakthrough lives on the other side. Did you have a moment that you feel recently that you had in any aspect of your life where you just feel like you pushed through?
One that comes to mind for me, and I do get to hop off in 3 minutes, but just yesterday I had a major breakdown. And yeah, there was a communication I received, and it was through a voice message that was super triggering for me. And I found myself going into this like fight or flight response, and very uncomfortable. And thankfully, like, it wasn't I mean, even if it was a face-to-face conversation, I would have said I need to step away for a second. But the way I did respond, because in the past it would have been very reactive. I would have gotten defensive, I would have gotten angry, I would have been blaming all over the place and all of that. And in this situation, I felt that I felt these feelings arise, and I realized I get to sit with this for a minute. And so I messaged back and I said, I was honest. I said, I feel triggered. I don't understand. Give me a minute. And and they responded. They said, I hear you, and I would love to know what's coming up for you. And I sat there, I did I did some breath work, because I know, like, with our breath, we can really start to calm the nervous system. Just doing really slow breaths, really extending my exhalations. That really was helping, just like, reground me. And because when we're reactive, we're not thinking clearly. We're not going to respond well. So just kind of grounding myself. And then after a few minutes, I shared what was coming up for me. None of it was right or wrong, good, bad, but it was just sharing my emotions, like what I was feeling. And once I let myself do that, I felt better. And then we were able to realign. And in the past, I would have just like not said anything and kind of stuffed it, and that is not supportive to myself or to anyone involved. And what we learned in that experience was what seemed like unclear communication was actually disconnection. And that was really, I think, I know I got a breakthrough in that experience. And perhaps, the other people involved did as well. I think so. And yeah. And so it wasn't uncomfortable, or it wasn't comfortable the whole time, of course, but it did create a deeper connection and intimacy in that experience. So that was really powerful for me.
Beautiful. I acknowledge you for being brave. Perfect song for you, girl.
Yeah, it was yeah.
Yes.
Good. It was a big learning experience for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
I do
I
get
love
to
that.
hop off, but
Yes. Thanks for being here.
I love this so much. I love what you're creating, this space here. Hey, Danielle. Good to
Hi,
see
Jen. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. We'll see you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye, see you
Jen.
soon. We'll talk this week.
Yes.
Hi, Danielle. Welcome.
Hi,
Welcome
Margarita.
to
Hi,
the
Cindy.
talk on intimacy.
Hello.
And yeah, a couple of things that were coming up for everybody was, like leading with love, vulnerability. It's like sometimes a worthiness conversation, or self-love, listening to your body, pausing, where do you feel it? Does it align with your life, the choices you're making? Like that's how, like, going in and getting intimate. And one thing that came up with what Jen was sharing was just, she said the word disconnect, right? Disconnection. And I was like, so funny that I'm experiencing disconnect from friends and family. And I'm like wondering why. And yeah, a mentor was like, well, if the outside is a mirror of your inside, what does that say? I'm like, I'm disconnected with myself. I was like, by default, right? And it's another reminder of how to get intimate with myself, you know?
So, Margarita, can I ask how you get intimate? Because so many people are like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I get intimate with myself? So, what do you do to get intimate with yourself?
The word curious has been coming up a lot. Like getting curious without judgment, right? Because if I that's why I say the word curious, because it comes from a like, oh, I wonder, right? Not from a I'm gonna go in and start self-criticism and judgment with why is it right or wrong to feel this way, or bad or good. So I get curious with it, and then I really close my eyes and I take a breath and I ask myself, well, what's underneath that? What am I making it mean? How am I disconnected with myself? How am I creating this connection? What aspects of my life and I'm not connected to with myself? And when I can do that, I could see the direct connection and the dots that it creates with the people in my life and how that is a ripple effect. Right. And that's why, like, I'm sometimes doing personal development work can feel or come off selfish to the world around you. At least that's been my experience. Maybe not the case for a lot of people, right? Because I am all in, all or nothing. So it's like I feel that the prices that have been paid up until now for not showing up in my power and in my truth are way too big. And I'm like urgency. I'm urgent to get there. And like I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get intimate, get any kind of feedback, coaching. And that's getting intimate with myself and my blind spots. And asking for support is another way I can get intimate with myself, because now I have support of coaches and mentors out there like you, Danielle, who ask those questions that allow me to get vulnerable. And then I get to trust myself that is really what I want and choose it. How do you do it, Danielle?
Thank you for sharing that. And what I'm hearing is constantly like giving yourself feedback, like checking in with yourself and what's working, what's not working. And it's just information. And so I love that. I love the reflection, the checking in, okay, like pausing and saying, okay, where else am I not connected? Because as we do one thing, we do everything. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. So for me, oh my gosh, intimacy is that was 2023. That was my word of last year. And I thought intimacy needed to look a certain way. And I thought it was in person. I thought it was, see, touch, feel people, so that I couldn't hide physically. Because in 2022, I hid. Oh, I hid in plain sight. And I still had a wall and a mask on. And I was stretched into redefining what intimacy looked like. And I was open to possibility and created intimacy a totally different way than I expected through a Zoom room, which I didn't think I would get to this level of intimacy I was searching for. And what the key for me that unlocked intimacy was vulnerability. I totally grew up that I had my shit together. This is the story I told myself, that, oh my gosh, if I don't have my shit together, the whole thing is going to fall apart. And I don't know if you've ever felt like if you don't think, or if everyone doesn't think you have your stuff together, that like you look like you're incompetent or incapable or just not have your stuff together. So I never thought that I could be vulnerable and be authentic, that I always had to put the happy face on and hold it together. Nobody wanted to see my stuff. And I got feedback from that saying I wasn't relatable.
Mm. Mm.
And I don't know how many people you have in your life that they look like they have their shit together and you're like, they're so not relatable. Like, do they really? Or are those filters? Like, are they being their authentic self? And what I realize is that I gravitate to people when they're their most vulnerable. And then I feel like, oh my gosh, they're just like me. And I always said, I have friends that are in AA and NA, different programs, and I go to meetings, open meetings with them. And I'm so amazed, like the support system that they have. And I always said, I think just adulting, we need a support system.
Mm.
Like, why do we have to lone wolf it? Why do we have to think we have to outdo the Joneses instead of going to the Joneses and saying, I don't have a clue and I need support. Why do we live in a society where we're just outdoing each other?
Mm.
And for me, like, so I kept asking, like, where is the adulting support system? Like, I want that. I want that AA for
We're gonna
adulting.
start it. We're gonna start it. You and I.
And well, and
Podcast.
I found it. I found it in hardcore leadership and a community of like-minded people where we don't tear each other down. We support each other. We hold each other high. And it opened this door of, oh my gosh, I can show my vulnerability. I can show
Mm.
my true what I'm feeling inside. And I do know the blue sky is above the clouds. I do know that. But not every day is a happy, joyful day. Rainbows and sunshine and cupcakes. So I can have a moment. And just like you, Margarita, checking in with myself and acknowledging and giving myself grace that that's okay. I don't have to have my stuff together. Not everybody does. And actually, that's when people love to support, is when you don't know the answers. And that was another part of intimacy, was receiving,
Mm.
being open to receiving support.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, I just got off a call with my relationship coach, and she's like, oh my gosh, like the transformation in the last few months of you, that trust fall. Like, I never felt like if I fell back, anyone would have me. And now I'll fall all day because I have support and I
And you have
trust.
wings.
Yeah, I have wings. And so that has created intimacy for me, because intimacy into me, you see. And when I show up messy, and I'm not going to die. Like, the world is not going to explode. And people now relate to me. I'm approachable. And it's like this weight has been lifted. So
Mm.
when I'm intimate, when I'm vulnerable, I create freedom.
Mm.
Then what does everybody want? Freedom,
And intimacy.
intimacy.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love everything.
For you.
There were so many parts in there that, oh, I love what you said. Anything coming up for you, Cindy?
Well, I kind of want to go back to what Jen was saying and maybe a little bit of what Danielle was saying, but when, especially I would say probably since COVID, I have seen a rise in people feeling disconnected. You know, people were thrown into virtual, people were thrown into even maybe some hybrid. I work in a field where we're considered essential, but trying to be part essential, being safe, being intimate with the conversations that we had to have with everybody around us, the amount of controversy and conflict around vaccines and not vaccines, and having to be somewhere where you didn't want to be or didn't feel safe. I really saw a rise in people disconnecting and being disconnected. And even the recovery, I think now is still so far behind where we used to be. I think when people are face to face, it's harder to stay disconnected because you're going to run into them in the break room. You're going to run into them when you get a cup of coffee. You're going to run into them in the elevator. You're going to run into them in the hallways. I think it's much harder to hide when you're face to face, but I think people find it very easy to get disconnected, to stay in their story, to stay hidden when they're remote. You know, Jen was talking about the email and the trigger. I can tell you most people would be like, read it, maybe disconnect, you know, let it eat away at them, never say anything, never address it, and let that burden continue and continue and continue, and never have that conversation of, you know, you wrote this, did you intend it to come across this way? And the other things, I don't think we were ever given the tools or the training on how to communicate in a virtual world. So I do think our communications and our misunderstandings are increasing without the tools on how to fix them in that type of world. You know, we talked about, I heard her say Zoom rooms and being intimate. It is possible, but you have to have the tools and the training on how to do it and how to work it and how to get there. And I still think that's a huge deficit where we are today in building intimacy, is how do you do that when so many people are not face to face? I think it's a huge gap that we get to address and overcome and speak to. And I think forums like this help in that space.
What do you think are the key components to create that intimacy in a virtual room that come for you, Cindy?
So this is my wheelhouse. I mean, I've improved all my team engagement scores. Mine are at 99.2. My teams have increased over 20 points of the last year and a half. But it's really bringing people together, but giving them opportunities, not like, what are you working on? You know, it's not staying at that superficial level. You know, we may find 5 things that are alike, you know, do things that get people truly talking like they would in the workplace. And learning how to do that intimately, vulnerable, you know, even from a vulnerable space. And, you know, my team is like, we can talk to each other. We didn't even know we had each other. And we're all in different states, different countries, but we're able to do it. But you have to give them the space and the training, and they have to trust you. So, you know, it's not only building it between them, they have to trust that the space that you're putting them in is safe.
How do you build that trust?
You have to
With
be
them.
transparent. You have to be transparent. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, you know, and it's being willing to, and I've had the conversation, feedback is neutral until you make it to the point it's not. If somebody said something to you and you're taking it, why did you take it that way? Would you have taken that way if they were face to face? How would you have handled it? Well, I would have talked to them. Well, why would you talk to them now? It's like, you know, but it's really being transparent. And I think a lot of leaders do not do well in that space of transparency when it comes to themselves as a leader, for the feeling that they may be seen as not a leader or not strong enough or not, you know, they can't lead a team if they're in that space. And I think it's really quite opposite. My team, they're nothing like me. I really meet them where they're at. And I bring in such a diverse team that when they learn that this person's not going to take your job over here, then they learn to trust each other. They can go to that other person with their questions without the fear of they're going to see me as stupid, because they all bring a different skill set to the table. So it's learning, you know, what do you bring? What do you bring? And, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've had the conversation. I didn't hire you all to be alike or to be like me. I brought you in because you all are unique and bring a different skill set that makes this team whole. And then as they start talking and exchanging, they start to learn who they can go to for this question or this question or this question. And then they start building trust. And then they trust of what I said because they're seeing what I'm telling them and when I'm being transparent with them is true. And then there's things that I can't tell them. And I'll just say, you know what, this is the direction we're going. Unfortunately, at this point in time, I can't give you any more information than this. But as I get it, I will. And being true to your word and staying in integrity and, you know, then still continues to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be that role model and you have to allow them to be their own role models and mentors.
I love that. You perfectly tied everything that Nell was saying, right? On like what it looks like on one end and what it's creating, disconnect. And over here, you're creating vulnerability and trust in your group where you're getting so intimate with, you know, and I'm sure you're creating magic because of that, right? Because they're rising each other up and not competing against one another. And that's a beautiful space. And I will work for you any day. You're hiring, let me know.
I have a high retention rate, so I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Yes, and I can see why.
And Cindy, what I loved too was being your word. It like integrity is the key. That is all we have is our word. And in landing that when you make a commitment to your team, when you follow through and you're being your word, then they get to trust you. And that is what creates relationships. So how do we shift the society so that people actually are their word and follow through with being their word?
I'm in the beta program for that right now.
Yeah.
I'm in that beta program right now. Yes. When I started doing this work, I started quickly recognizing, wow, I'm not my word. In so many places, I'm not my word. And every time I commit, because I do have promoter energy, and I'm like, yes to everything. And then I walk out the room and I go, what did I just say yes to? Right? I'm not being intimate first with my calendar, with already the commitments that I have and how I'm willing to spread myself. And that starts to eat at my, like, people trusting me, and then also me trusting myself.
Yeah.
And so, like, getting really intimate with what your word is and why you're committing to it. And then when you break your word, getting underneath, what was that? What do you make more important? Without a shame, blame, just an awareness, so that when you're willing to make your word again, you're like, okay, I don't want to go through that breakdown again, because that was not a good payoff. It was not the prices I want to pay anymore are too big. And the prices other people pay for not me being my word. Yeah. And so me showing up every week here is practicing being my word and doing that. And I've noticed that when there's other, like, I have accountability, I show up and I'm like, why am I not holding myself accountable for myself? And so that's the practice. The practice is to go in and ask yourself those questions. Yeah. And what's important for you.
Yeah, I think the other thing, we talk a lot about active listening, but there's a lot of words we say to ourselves, but are you actively listening to yourself? Mm-hmm. And are you looking at it? And I do a lot of journaling. I have since I was very, very, very young. And I'll go back and read some of the stuff. I'm like, ooh, I did say that about myself. And, what did I take and what did I do? Did I ignore it? Did I address it? What was the benefit? What was the fallout? We do a good job. Well, we try to do a good job of active listening to everybody, but I don't think we do a good enough job at listening to ourselves or the words that we tell ourselves. So I think that's a gap that we carry ourselves.
Yeah. And Cindy, with your journaling, do you go back and reflect and see what was like where you were versus where you're at now and where you're going in your vision?
and I'm pretty anal in this. I'm not sure where I even got it from, but I do. I go back about every 3 months and review my writings, what I've learned, and I think that goes back to kind of like leading in love and the type of leader that I am. Is once I've learned and overcome, I meet with my team and I go over personal goals and professional goals, which is always a transition for my team because they're like, you care about my personal, but you can't be whole in your professional if you're not whole in your personal. And I don't think it's work-life balance. I think it's a work-life integration. They're always going to cross over and you have to meet people where they are. So as I learn something myself and I've gone through it and I've worked through it, I bring that back to my team, so, maybe I had a gap where I'm trying to think of one at the moment and it's not coming to me, but maybe I overcome something and I bring it back to my team like, hey guys, I've done this, this, and this. Where are you guys in this space? And as a leadership team, I don't do it. I have 70 people that work for me. I don't do it for all 70, but for my direct reports, I will go through and we'll have those conversations. Or maybe I found a reading that I'm journaling on. Like right now we're doing hidden potential. And what are we taking from that both personally? What are we journaling and how are we implementing that into our lives? So I do the same thing with my journaling every 3 months that I do with the rest of it. And then I bring it forth to my team as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. Because in my experience, same thing, like where I was 3 months ago is not where I am now. And so I get to acknowledge myself for where I'm at now. And then I know I'm not going to be here long because I'm heading here. And so it's like, it's that balance of, okay, acknowledge where I've come from. And then, okay, celebrate that. And then, okay, what's the next step? Where am I going from here? And so many people, unfortunately, don't even see that vision. They don't allow themselves that space to have that vision. And so I think that's incredible that you ripple that through your business.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a blessing. My leadership has given me the bandwidth to do with my team as see fit. I mean, I do have one of the highest engagement scores, so I think they know there's something there that they've allowed me to continue doing what I do.
I have a question for you. Were you always showing up this way, or did you level up, or is it something new once you went through the leadership program? And how you
showing up which way?
In your what you do with your business, yeah.
I have always shown up this way. I think where my training got me is, and I think I've had this conversation before, is I got to such a professional level and professional conversation that learning to talk outside of anything professional, I would work on people's personal goals, but I wasn't so much into, my dog had to have surgery because my dog has cancer. And let me, I make, a note. Okay, their dog had cancer and they're going to have their tail removed on Tuesday. I'm going to follow up with them on Thursday, see how they're doing, see if they need time off, see how they're feeling. I didn't get to those level of conversations until I really learned that I wasn't truly connecting on a personal level. I did great in the professional space, but learning to really bring those two pieces back to connecting on a personal level and having those conversations. And I think it really, really became clear to me during summits and doing interviews that it's not that I couldn't, but my first couple were really, really, really messy because I had lost the skill set to really communicate, which was funny because I had 6 scholarships in journalism, wrote for the school paper, had all those interviews, did all that for years and years and years. But then I got such at a leadership level that everyone's like, get it in 2 bullets, get it in 2 bullets, get it in 2 bullets, get it out. They're not going to read past 2 sentences, So my whole process over time changed. And then trying to go back and now, integrating both of those pieces and bringing more of myself to the conversations and making that intentional effort to be personal. So not just focus on their goals and, okay, what did you do this week? What did you do this week? Did you get here? What can I support you with? But really having true conversations at that personal level. I
Yeah.
think that's what the leadership training gave me and brought to my realization, is I wasn't being as personally connected as I was professionally being connected.
Yes, what I'm hearing you say is that when you were intentional with your empathetic listening and connection, you created intimacy with your
Yeah.
team
Yep.
and yourself. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, disconnect. Disconnect was that word, right? Disconnected with you, with your interpersonal like relationship with yourself. Did you feel like you were able to build relationship with you too through the process? Was it something that you went inward and got intimate with to create that?
No,
Or
I've
is
always
it
been
just
really good.
like,
I've always been really good with intimate myself because of my journaling. And that's something I've always done. So I don't think that, but it's allowing yourself to be honest with where you have improvement and understanding where those gaps are and not making excuses for those gaps, but leaning into them and doing what needs to be done to change, and then reflecting, and I do a lot and I write a lot. So I do take a lot of notes, and then, there's definitely not perfect. I mean, there's things that I'm like, oh, do I really care? But then it's not about what I care about, it's what's important to them. And I do care about them. So it's making that intentional effort to get to a place where I care about them. Maybe not the topic. The topic maybe doesn't fit into a space where I may even have knowledge of. And I don't need to have knowledge of it. What's important is that they know that I am there for them and that I care about them. And not so much what I know about the topic.
yeah, and when you create that level of connection, it starts to build also trust and intimacy. And so they're able to show up vulnerably for you in those moments, right? That creates expansion within their work and personal development as well. That's beautiful. So like vulnerability, and the other, I think, important pillar for intimacy, vulnerability, where it requires us to like really share our fears and being open and honest and willing to share our authentic selves. And it's one of the things that I think I talked about it on the last call when we were talking about vulnerability, and how, just like you were saying earlier, Danielle, is like society doesn't make you feel safe because it's a sign of weakness. And so we all have almost, for lack of better words, trained people to be competitive, and how we can get more and more power and higher status and more this, more that. And I'm seeing it in our children today, i.e. my daughter. And with her, it might just be her love language, where she is receiving gifts. It's, I think, her love language, but it's on the outside for me, right? Because I'm recognizing this is my judgment, like racket, my nerves, is feeling like I want to give her the value on not having that be what you're feeling your worth with, or like the more you have, the more value you have. Like I want to teach her. Yeah, the microwave is going. That's why.
Like you're
I'm
breaking up.
done. All right, microwave's done. Can you hear me better?
Feels better.
Okay. And I was just saying that I recognize that it was, as a parent, I want to instill the message to my daughter that as long as you're not feeling like these things are filling in your worthiness or your value, then fine, right? But like at some point, when is it too much? When do you need more, want more? And I just think it's almost in the social media. We're so about being out here that we forget the most important thing is to be in here. Like what is it that you want versus what you need, what you think you need? Like there are very little things we need. We need air, we need water, and food, and love,
And intimacy.
and intimacy. And that's where love lives.
Yeah.
Love for yourself, getting intimate with yourself. And so vulnerability, is there a story of vulnerability for you that when you finally leaned in, created intimacy in a place in your life that wasn't before?
Yeah, for me, oh my gosh. I mean, I am a loving, trusting, vulnerable woman. And I, growing up in a strong Italian family, like vulnerability equal weakness. That's the story I made up. That's the limiting belief I created based off of my experience, was vulnerability was weakness. And I couldn't be weak. And that put a lot of pressure on a firstborn child. And my childhood was very responsible. Also, I'm very strong-willed. So my mom chose to allow me reign because she knew I had a good head on my shoulders and that I would make good decisions. I didn't know. I mean, I was floundering out there, but I couldn't show that because that was weakness. And so shifting and actually surrendering to being open, that vulnerability is such strength. And Brene Brown, oh, she's amazing. And her book, was it Mastering
Dare to
Greatness?
lead,
Dare,
or this?
uh,
She has a bunch of them.
yeah. So one of them, she polls all these people about what is an act of vulnerability that you've experienced in your life. And it's, asking somebody to marry you. It's, how do you, move forward after cancer diagnosis? Like so many vulnerable situations.
Saying I love you first.
Yeah. Yeah. And not hearing it back. I mean, just so many opportunities for vulnerability. And then she asks, was there weakness in any of those? And that just really landed for me, that vulnerability is actually a sign of strength to me now. It's
Courage.
like when I am vulnerable, that means that I'm super strong and confident. And that shift in perspective, just that little shift. And you never know when you're going to hear what lands with you. And to challenge your limiting belief and question it. Is that true? Is vulnerability weakness? Is it true? And when you really look into your limiting belief and challenging it, then you get to uncover and start seeing the possibilities that isn't true. And then once it lands, oh my gosh, like being vulnerable now, in a presentation I did the other night, I was in tears because I allowed how I was feeling inside to show outside. And that feedback I got was that, wow, you were relatable and I felt you. And you lean in. Like you said, Cindy, you lean in when people are being vulnerable, and that creates connection and intimacy. And for those that I'm not landing with, that's okay. It's okay, because I'm not going to land with everyone. So it's believing in myself enough that I don't need the exterior validation. And what is the intention? What is the intention of vulnerability and intimacy? To create connection, love, peace, freedom. So then I go back to the intention, and then it's all good. Create ease and flow.
And I don't think you can reach the point of, I'm not going to reach everybody. everybody's not going to like what I say or like what I do, or even, you know, vulnerable. And they're like, okay, you're way too much for me. If you're intimate with yourself, all those other pieces don't matter because you've already accepted who you are and what your message is, that somebody else's opinion of your vulnerable moment has less impact. And I think when we're not intimate with ourselves, I think that's where people get really stuck of, I was vulnerable and they didn't accept me and I'm not going to go back there. It's because they didn't have that true connection with themselves and who they are to stand in their authenticity. So I think it's very important. And when we talk about intimacy, I think that first step is really getting intimate with yourself and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the
What I
trust.
heard,
Yeah.
yeah, what I heard too is staying in your personal power is important, right? And the only way for me to recognize I was losing or letting it go, like giving it up, was going in. You know, one of a friend of mine, she's like, girl, sounds like you, personal power boundaries. I was like, really? Like, you're right. I'm losing my personal power. Like earlier I mentioned how that person made me feel this way. That person did that. And so I'm right. I'm right to feel this way. This person wronged me. No. Right? Like if I were to ask that person, hey, you said this thing and it made me feel this way. Is that what you intended? They'd be like, oh my gosh, no. I was in my head, or whatever the story is. But we're not willing to be vulnerable and trust that our connection as a friendship or whatever is deep. We don't even trust ourselves that, you know, maybe it wasn't about us. Maybe it is about us. Like, well, then just ask. The only way to get the answer for sure is to ask, right? Instead of just sitting there in assessment and going, what could have happened? What could have been this? Like one thing I realized for myself is when I picked up the phone and I called that person that I was feeling like a disconnect with, and I came to them and I was vulnerable, and because the intention was to create connection and to clear the elephant in the room, if there was one to clear. And I realized that for two of the calls, it had nothing to do with me. But I was intuitive enough to sense there was a disconnect that happened with that person, with something in the group, but it had nothing to do with me. And so they saw me and they said, thank you so much for seeing me, for caring enough, actually calling me and being brave to talk to me about it and present it to me. And that between us now, those people that I called, like we have a deeper level of intimacy now. Just because I cared enough to not make it about me, but to be about the intention, which was to create connection with this person I care deeply about. That I've never gotten a chance to hug in person, but I care deeply about, because yes, intimacy can be created in these rooms.
Yeah.
It is just how it's set up and your choice. If I choose not to show up in vulnerability, people aren't going to feel safe or trust me that I'm going to hold them if they fall back. That song, Trust Fall. It's my leadership class buddy team song. So every time I hear that song, I'm like, oh, who can I call and say hi or just leave a message? Thinking of you. How's it going? You're rocking it in the world. Let's connect. And most of the time, people are like, oh my gosh, your message was perfect timing. You just brought a smile to my day and I needed that. That created intimacy and connection. Simple. I didn't even have to be there to create that. And people start trusting me because it's those little things, those little, hey, you're in my heart. I was just thinking of you. Like I believe it now so strongly that when somebody comes in your mind, it's either you got on their thought current and they're thinking of you because or something, or because, yeah, you are so connected to them that they could use hearing your voice to assure them that everything's fine, that there are kind, loving people in the world that care for them and see them in their greatness. Like I had a friend come to my heart, and I texted her, and I was like, oh my gosh, the last, because I called her, and then she came up to my heart again, and I was just like, that our last conversation after 8 years of not talking has been sitting with me, and I just want to check in, like, how are you doing? And she called me, and she was in distress. She was feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. And mind you, this is somebody that is not necessarily someone that I saw in person a lot. Like I met her once, and then she lives in Arizona, but we connected through phone because I was there to support her in her fertility. Then we lost connection for 8 years. So that there was something about me showing up the way I did on that call after 8 years that built trust within us and intimacy, that she could call me and be vulnerable like that with me. That in that call, even though it was like a 30-40 minute call after 8 years, that created so much connection, because that was the intention, that she was able to come and call me. And it was a very emotional call for an hour. And I honored her, and I acknowledged her for even stepping up and seeing me as someone, like reaching out, loving herself enough to reach for support. And the more that we can show up in our own vulnerable, authentic selves, those people will start coming and seeing you as reachable and approachable and personable. Right, Danielle? Like, we don't want to come off as someone who knows more than you and I got my shit together, because no, we don't. Like, the truth is we don't. Like, I started this call over here and not really present because I had life happening. I've taken a few deep breaths in this call. Intimacy is that kind of conversation. It's uncomfortable at first because it's unfamiliar. And sometimes we fear that if we open up, people will judge us. Our connection will change because they'll see me on a different light. Right? But you got to trust yourself enough. And you build, and then don't be vulnerable with just a random Tom and Larry on the street. Or like you would say to me, don't be too vulnerable with your staff doesn't need to know your personal vulnerability, its stories, right? So we get to also be conscious of the people that are in our little, as Brene Brown would say, your square, your 1 inch square, what does he call it? That square inch trust. You write just in a 1 inch square piece of paper, the names of the people you trust that you can call anymore. Those are the people that you have the deepest intimacy with, that you can be fully vulnerable with. And it's good to have those people. You have those people in your life. Write them down, put it in your wallet, and call them every once in a while, right? Fill in that trust bucket.
Yeah. And along those lines, bye, Cindy. Along those lines, and it was Daring Greatly is the book
That's
that
the
I'm
one.
referring to. That's it. And she also talks in there about the marble jar. So, like, what I'm hearing you say is that, every time you're just reaching out to say, hi, I'm thinking of you, you're adding a marble to their trust jar. So they're trusting you. And so you get to look at all the people and their marble jars, and are their marbles full in that jar with you or not? And vice versa. Are you filling up their marble jars of trust and vulnerability? And yes, we get to be open, but yes, you're not going to, dump everything on somebody you just meet. And
I might. It just depends.
it could be one of
I wear
those
my heart
days.
on the sleeve.
Exactly. One of those days. So I think it's just incredible to to be present to it. And what kind of vulnerability, like you were saying with your kids, like what are they putting out there? Because I know when I was growing up, I just had my little hometown. I didn't have people like from all over the world on something like this. And so how do you create vulnerability within social media and within the parameters of today where you can trust people and be vulnerable and be intimate?
That's a great question, because I think especially right now with AI being such a forefront and everybody's minds, and the writer's strike, and I think now there's going to be another strike, or the action strike, and there's going to be like another strike in the future, all because of AI, right? And like how easy it is for us to pretend to be someone else on social media, how easy it is for people to bully and be trolls because there's no physical connection there, right? And responsibility for that, or immediate backlash, right? You could just go and then disappear and never come back to the room again. But you just created chaos. You probably, you know what you're creating when you're going in there with your intention to hurt. And I want to ask you, like, why? First, like, what's underneath that?
Yeah.
Are you screaming for attention? Like, I want to hug you. And so social media is definitely one of those big questions especially for parents with children, because what is being fed on the feed looks like the perfect life. And if you've ever seen the movie, and I forget what it's called, there was a documentary about the fakeness of social media and how people even hire people, a house at stage, and you just go in and do your photo shoot for the day and then leave, and then you pay them and you say thank you. And people even pay for Autobots to like and comment on their page to look like they have fans.
Wow.
So this is all like a fake life. And we're all sitting there going, well, I'm not going to be as good as them, right? They look perfect and they look unreachable. In reality, they're sitting there in the background going, I took 1,000 photos just to be okay with one of them because I'm that insecure about myself.
Yeah.
And instead of just coming out and saying that, like, hey, I'm being brave and sharing this picture, even though I took 1,000 of them because I didn't think I was good in them. Imagine the permission it will give everybody.
Yeah. And what would it look like just to show up vulnerably and not have the mask on? And like, do we not love ourselves? And yes, marketing, I mean, advertising, you look at the glossy pictures in the fashion magazines of these perfect creatures. And yeah, it's a comparison. And it's like, how can we just ripple out that you are loved exactly how you are? That you don't need the mask. You don't need the $100 mascara. You don't need the bells and whistles. That you are perfect exactly how you are. And oh my gosh, we would, I just see this world of perfectionly imperfect people.
That's my motto: perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
And I've got to the point where I'm falling in love with myself.
How's that feel?
Myself.
How does that
It feels
feel?
amazing. It feels amazing because it empowers me to not need it on the outside of the world. Need and like wanting to hold on to things that might be toxic for me just because I feel love there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like I was doing that where I was holding on to a toxic relationship because I didn't, first of all, value and myself or feel like I was worthy of a better situation. And I was picking people who were just validating that story of that limiting belief that I had, that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, right? And so like I was subconsciously, obviously, not on purpose, choosing people like that. And even though people can seem great when they're in the great moments, it's like, how do they make you feel? Are they constantly criticizing you? Are they constantly belittling you, making you feel less than worthy? Then that I just found out that's a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. I thought toxic was like, you know, when you hear the word toxic, you feel so, you know, getting beat up and manhandled and thrown and called bitch and all these other bad, horrible words. And I was in toxic relationships like that. And I was even in a relationship that was like on the avoid and neglecting side, which is also toxic.
Yeah.
Because then I was feeling like not seen by the guy that supposedly loved me.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you now is curiosity and getting curious. Why is somebody treating me like that? Why is he not lifting me up? Why is he tearing me down? What is the why behind it? So instead of being frustrated or disgusted or angry, jumping into curiosity. And when you're curious, what does that open up for you?
Well, yes, when it shifted to curiosity and not be self-beat up, right? And being more even critical of myself. When I got curious, it opened and made me free. It made me free to really just look deep, have acceptance, right? Love myself. And then make the choice. Make the choice every time it shows up. And it's not like I'm going to change it overnight. It's not like a year or two from now, I'll stop whatever thing. I just get to be self-cleaning, quickly shift to the point where I do it so much that over time, I'll even forget that that was a limiting belief or a thing, because I have already been living on the other side.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, and you know, thanks for talking about journaling, because that's another word I keep breaking to myself. I've been wanting to journal for so long and I see the value in it. And yet still have not stepped into doing that.
Well, and I
yeah,
think
because
part of the
I feel
journaling,
different.
well, just part of the journaling that I think landed for me with Cindy was reflecting back, like going back and seeing the progress. Whereas like before, I would just journal and journal and journal, but I would never go back and look at it. So it's acknowledging where you were at, where you're at now, and then where you want to be,
Yes.
and keeping that progress. So like reflecting and acknowledging yourself, celebrating yourself for your journey.
Yeah. And it's I see the value now, especially because when I look back, graduating the leadership program, I'm a different person there, different person at that point, but I was still very much still caught in the pattern and the drift and like the mediocrity of life. And it wasn't until I got into the graduate program that I really stepped up to my leadership and taking control and choosing the life that I keep claiming I want.
Yeah.
Right. And so and that's the first time that I really started going intimate with myself, really going in and probing in areas that I thought I had already gone in, but like getting all the little corners, you know, having people help me with a flashlight. Oh, you missed the spot. You missed the spot. You have a blind spot. You missed the spot. Right. And that has really but supported me in my journey to be here today. Because even just in October, late October, I had a complete identity shift. Like a different person took over. And even from yesterday, today I'm a different person than I was yesterday because I had such great transformation and breakthrough because I got intimate. And I was willing to lean in and ask for support and not do it alone, not lone wolfing it, as you mentioned. And all this time I kept saying, nobody understands me. I'm all alone. I don't have support. That was my story.
Yeah.
And it played out everywhere in my life, Danielle, everywhere in my life. And then I realized, oh, well, I'm alone because I isolate myself. I don't have support because I don't accept it and I don't ask for it. And nobody understands me because I'm not speaking my truth.
Yeah. And what if all of the triggers, all of the people that it's not smooth sailing, that is all put there, you've created that to shine mirrors at where you get to keep going. And transformation is a journey. There's no destination. And so it's uncovering one layer after another. And like you said, looking at all the blind spots. And this blind spot over here might not be there tomorrow, but this one over here just came up, and being open to taking yourself on. So, Margarita, I want to say thank you so much for having me today. And I have learned so much. It was great to be a part of this. And I do get to run. So I love you.
I love you. Thank you so much for coming and bringing the energy and your joy and your wisdom and your generous giving heart.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you soon. Love
Bye.
you.
All right. To everyone else still listening and out there in the world, I want to thank you for choosing me today and for tuning in. What landed for you? Please share in the comments. What was the things that landed for you on this talk? You have intimacy in your life? Are you striving for intimacy? Does intimacy feel like unreachable and unattainable? Well, if you said yes or no to any of these questions and you want to really go deep and really take yourself on, I invite you to reach out to me and reach out to Cindy, reach out to Catherine Ann, reach out to Jen or Danielle or Ellen. And we're all here. We're all here to take you on that journey of discovering yourself. Like, imagine and envision yourself falling in love with yourself again. What would that feel like to fall in love with yourself? Not on an ego-based way, but like with full compassion and acceptance. Like, just imagine when you can love yourself that much and be intimate with yourself that deeply and that profoundly, and surrendering to it and fully speaking authentically with what you want. Have you taken the time to sit down and even ask yourself what you want? That's your first step. What do you want? Who are you? Who are you? Go back. Think about where you were when you were 6, 7, 8 years old. And something inspired you and something clicked inside of you, and that you were like, that's what I want to do. That's my purpose. That lights me up. That's my passion. What was it? What was it? And if the answer is I don't know, then you're pretending not to know, maybe. Getting curious about that. Are you pretending not to know? And if you truly don't know, then this is your opportunity to get intimate with yourself and start asking that. Maybe what you want changed. Right? And a lot of times the things that we consider our hobbies that we're just naturally good at, that's our true passion and purpose for in this world. And there's a way to innovate what you love to do and bring it to the world. Because your passion and your purpose is inspiring. Because it's where you shine. And it supports us to see people living in their passion and in their purpose. Because there's healing. There's healing that happens on so many different levels when we show up authentically with what we want in the world and who we are in the world and our purpose. If you're struggling to find your purpose, you haven't gotten intimate with yourself. If you're struggling to find passion in your life, you're not getting intimate with yourself. If you're struggling to build connections and intimacy and intimate relationships, you're not being those things for you. So on this call, I invite you, get curious. Get curious. Where in your life do you want to build intimacy? And then focus inward and see where in your life you're not being intimate with yourself. Where are you creating disconnect? Where are you lacking empathy for yourself and connection with yourself? Where are you not trusting yourself? Where are you not willing to get vulnerable? And with whom and why? These are all great questions to ask yourself to get you started on your journey in the art of intimacy. It is not hard. It's also not easy, and it's a journey. There's no end result. There's no get to space. Because there's always room for growth and expansion and deeper, deeper intimacy and connection. So make sure that you share this with anyone in your life that you want to create intimacy with, or that is shared with you that they are searching for intimacy. Share this with everybody and anybody you know to support them. And also make sure that you mark your calendars for every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time when we get together and talk about coming home, coming back home to you, to who you truly are. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Until next time, my friends, please be kind to yourself and to others. Bye-bye. Oh, and I want to thank all the generous speakers who came on today and shared their time and wisdom. And I definitely got a lot of takeaways today from that. And I will start my journaling. That was a big takeaway that I got today. It's a great way to reflect on my journey and all the successes that I've had is to journal. So, are you journaling? All right, bye.